For those wondering why a greaseball, underdressed New Yorker is here to talk with you, I work at a company called Challenge Post. It says it on the T-shirt and the slide. We mostly help companies grow the developer community and the app ecosystem, for lack of a better buzzword, built on top of their APIs by featuring them in software competitions. So you heard Tony and Vanessa both talked about hackathons. There's sort of the in-person variety, and then there's also the online type, we'll usually call challenge. And so we'll get into best practices for both, and then how to make them awesome and some Q&A. The reason this is called app competitions, you're probably doing it wrong, as opposed to the more literal how to use app competitions to grow API traffic or whatever it says in the program, is because we're fairly high profile in this space, we get approached by everyone in the industry about wanting to run an app competition, and the ideas that they have are mostly awful. So this could be titled app competitions. You're probably planning it wrong, maybe more appropriately. So if I have one goal, it's to help you plan and execute a much better app competition that actually gets developers using your APIs and building cool stuff. So this is the money slide. So let's talk about what the roles are of each, because people come to me all the time and are like, I want to run a hackathon that's going to get developers all across the world to build really awesome products, like full-blown products on our platform, and I want to do it in the middle of nowhere in 2 days. I'm like, well, that isn't going to accomplish your goals, but cool plan. So what are hackathons good for? They are good for creating prototypes or hacks, right? These are 1 to 2 day competitions. You're not going to get a full-blown app despite the TechCrunch article that someone once wrote, right? They're good for local promotion. If it's in Stockholm, that's great for reaching developers in Stockholm. They're probably not going to get you developers all over the world. They're really good for awareness, right? So Tony talked about awareness is a big metric that they track, and they are really good for talking to a lot of people face to face. They're good for recruitment as long as you are transparent about that, right? Downside is oftentimes people sponsor a hackathon and they send recruiters and they don't send real evangelists who can actually help anybody. Not super useful, especially when people aren't looking for a job, and not really helpful for either end. You're not recruiting people who don't want to be recruited, and developers aren't getting help. They're good for fun, so they're not generally business plan competitions. They are about learning, meeting like-minded people, being a little bit goofy. Usually, when it comes down to winning, silly and awesome will smoke useful all day at hackathons. They tend to attract newbies, right? So these are usually on weekends, meaning they are going to attract people who are willing to give up their weekends. So they usually don't have a lawn to mow and a kid to take to soccer practice and all the other things that come with being a more senior engineer who's just had more time. And they're really good for networking, right? They're good for meeting people. You're there together. People come often alone, and they come with lifetime friends. There's lots of awesome stories where they find business partners or collaborators. So that's that. As opposed to an online challenge. Now, these generally are going to last more like 1 month to 4 months. So there's enough time to actually build a product. And often the eligibility requirements are, this is launched in an app store, it's available on the web, it's an MVP, or it's viable, right? Although the definition of what's minimally viable has gone way down. But anyway, it's viable-ish. It's global, so competitions are highly regulated, and you need to be careful before you launch one of these things. But generally, because it's on the internet, you can reach people all over the world. They're good for actual implementations, right? So we talk about products and implementations, right? These are meaningful engagement, not necessarily just trying to get the word out. They're good for partnerships. So when companies build something on your platform that is better than you built in-house, that's a good thing, because you can now find ways to work together. And we often see that. We've had many acquisitions happen through these competitions. We've had product integrations. Essentially, if people are interested in working on your platform, they're probably interested in working with you as a company. They're generally work, right? There's some big dollars on the line. There's a lot of hours. It may not have the sexiest products, but it'll often be the most useful with a real business case behind it. Generally, pros, again, because these are higher level projects, and existing teams. Sometimes you'll see some matchmaking, but for the most part, if you're going to build something virtually, you're going to do it with people you already knew. So now, a deeper dive into what makes hackathons awesome if it's now sort of hopefully clear what's in person, what's online. So meaningful theme. Generally, it is not about the money. Some companies very effectively use big money as a marketing tactic, but generally it's more about, we do tons more hackathons. We have about 5 or 6 a weekend. 4 out of those 5 are going to be about making your city better or solving a problem. Tons of civic stuff, or we've done stuff to improve the breast pump to make it better. Attacking these really interesting issues that people don't talk about and seeing how can we make this better. Clear and appropriate expectations. Sometimes people show up like, okay, hack. Well, that sucks because people don't really know what that means. They don't know when's the food going to get here. Is everyone going to demo? Who's doing what? So make sure you know, like any good meeting, right, you want to set the agenda. IP stays with developers. So there have been some really unfortunate cases where companies have invited developers, like, we're going to give you guys our API and see what we come up with in a weekend. And then they yank the API or the data away. Well, now you've just exploited those developers because they took their time to do something really interesting for you, and you've given them nothing afterwards. You know, maybe some free food and booze. Tony will show up. But you know, generally, if you're going to give this API to them, it should stay with them so they can keep improving on that project. Featured, I just said that, and a cool venue. So you know, developers work in plenty of co-working spaces and dungeons. You know, having a cool space, we've had them in stadiums. TechCrunch Disrupt just had this in this crazy, like, underground, I think it used to be like a torture chamber in London. But it was cool. We've had them, they've done them on planes, on buses, while they're moving. But generally, if you have access to a cool place, use that. It's going to inspire people to build inspiring things and just attend. And leveraging existing communities. So you know, often companies are much better off sponsoring one of the major college hackathons in the US, like MHacks or PenApps, or TechCrunch Disrupt, or even you know, a Salesforce hackathon or someone else's big hackathon, where you're going to get you know, a little piece of a giant audience, as opposed to throwing your own event where only a few people are going to show up and you already knew all of them. Or just, can you partner with people? Is there a local meetup group or a computer science department that you can leverage their audience and their space as well? So unique prizes. Cash is great. Unique stuff I couldn't get on my own, or probably wouldn't, is cooler. Trips, access to cool people, products that haven't been released yet. Any kind of rock star feeling that they can be like, look what I got and you didn't, that's awesome. Convenient timing. So often we hear like, and we want to do it on a Wednesday and we want all these like super senior developers to attend. It's probably not going to happen. If you're going to do a hackathon, it should be on a weekend and give people enough notice to take the time to be there, especially if they need to travel. Happens frequently. People are like, can we do it this weekend? Sure, but who has time to change their plans for you? So, you know, Challenge Post happens to be a platform for hackathons. Many hackathons historically have just not had a web presence. And so when everything's done, everyone goes home, there's nothing to show for it. The projects don't really exist online. The only thing left is a few tweets about some people had a good time there. So you really do want to celebrate what people build, explain what you're doing, and also have a place where you can communicate. You know, tell them when the food's going to be here. Tell them where the rules are, the schedule, all that kind of stuff. Helpful mentors and organizers. So I went on this a bit with the recruiters. Tony gave a great example of what he does at a hackathon. Send people that are actually going to help developers build cool shit that they couldn't do before and learn something new. And even if it's not just sponsors, have mentors who are there out of the goodness of their heart because they just love hacking. They want to give up their weekend to help developers learn new stuff because someone once helped them. That's really valuable and overlooked often. Often is the word. And a safe, tolerant, welcoming environment. So there is kind of a programmer culture that's growing. These are competitions. It can be very masculine. It can be very competitive. And you need to make it very clear from the outset that no kind of intimidation or discrimination or any other bad words that end in ation will be tolerated at your event. Right? This is a safe environment where people come to learn and do awesome stuff without any judgment, and you get my point. Teammate matchmaking. So it really stinks when people show up and they're excited about their first hackathon and it's kind of cliquey and they got nowhere to go. Right? So one of the first things you do after you set the agenda is you do who doesn't have a teammate, and then no, really, don't be shy. Who doesn't have a teammate? And Get them in one place, and don't try and do this online. It never really works. Just get them in one place and help them find each other. Ample internet and power. To be the first to get it right, it just never happens. The internet always goes down, or no one can find the password, or they got a million things to plug in and they can't. Just overdo internet and power. One of the great things you can do is get an internet sponsor. A lot of companies, especially if they're not necessarily in the space, they like to sponsor the internet because it's something that they can do that they have their name on. That doesn't really require like an evangelist to be there. So we've had like law firms and real estate companies do that because they want to attract the startup audience, but they don't really, they're not evangelists. Your food, don't serve crap food to college kids who already eat crappy food, right? And also like it's not the greatest for your energy and staying up all night when you're sitting on Domino's. So local, healthy, that's awesome. Plenty of caffeine and booze when age appropriate, but don't throw like a bunch of heavy grease at them. It's just not good and doesn't make the event special. Demo coaching, we did a pretty good job of that. Sorry, that's not what I meant. So at the end of your event, they're going to come demo their app and say, this is what I built. Many engineers, especially inexperienced engineers, are not great public speakers. So coach them on the very basics of, here's the problem that we wanted to solve, here's the tools that we used to build it, and here's the code. And don't let them pitch PowerPoint slides and videos. Make them show code. But if you can just do that, the problem, the tools, and here it is, it's going to go really well, and it'll make them come back the next time. And anyway, just do that. Functional audio and video. Again, anticipate the fact that people are going to show something on a screen if they're demoing, and that they may be speaking to a big room and have the resources to do that, because like people can't see a phone from that far away. And winner promotion and next steps. So, if your goal is to have these projects live on, make sure that you have office hours and mentors available, and maybe an online component that we'll get into, but something else for them to do so they can keep working on this with their new product and new friends. All right, so now we're going to get into these online challenges. So the first thing is your developer program ready for prime time? Meaning your onboarding is smooth, your documentation is there, there's a freemium-ish experience. Essentially, have you battle tested this thing enough that when you push it out to the world, it's not going to fall on its face and people are going to have a really great experience? If they're not, do some more hackathons so your experience gets there. Because we've unfortunately had cases where this wasn't it, and companies want to go big with their developer program, and it's just not ready, and no one's happy. Clear guidance on what to build and why. So the Cloud App Challenge, probably not the best name for your event, right? Then don't try and, too many buzzwords. The Industry Innovation Ecosystem Disruption Challenge, also not that good, right? Just be super, super literal with what you want people to do and why. Again, having an online presence. So often there'll be a splash page like, win $1 million, use our API. Right? Could you come up with some cool problem statements of here's the problem that we think you could solve. Here's some resources we think you could use. Essentially just, well, I said enough. Freemium access. So, if you want developers to use your stuff, it's probably going to have to be fairly inexpensive or free for them to use that. Where this is even more difficult is with hardware. So there's tons of Internet of Things, wearables. So how do you do that? Have a loaner program, have a developer discount program, do a bunch of local workshops so they can get their hands on the stuff. But it's shocking how many hardware companies don't anticipate that developers may not want to shell out a bunch of costs to work on their stuff. And again, ample time. So we typically see, it could be 1 month if it's something pretty simple, but generally these things last 3 or 4 months online. Enough time to really get the word out to a broad audience and for them to set aside enough time to build something really great. Compelling prizes. So cash is great. It's a sign of respect. But again, things that are unique. And do a popular choice prize. Why do you do a popular choice prize? Yeah, it gets people sharing, right? All of a sudden, you have a viral campaign, and everyone's sharing their stuff on Twitter and Facebook and emailing all their friends and family for votes. And all of a sudden, everyone knows what your platform is who didn't before because someone in their vague network wants to win a prize from your company. supporting events. So the online challenge is great. It's not a cure-all. There's still obviously a place for face-to-face. So the best online challenges are complemented by meetups and workshops and conferences and events where when you're meeting developers for the first time, you can say to them, this is an awesome start on using our platform. Keep working on it over the next month or 3 and enter our online challenge to win a bigger prize and more recognition when this thing's really kicking ass and you have it launched. Have high-profile and engaging judges. So again, going back to prestige, if you can get people who are a big deal in the space. We've had Steve Wozniak be a judge. We've had Mark Cuban, who people may not know, but he's a big tech entrepreneur and team owner. We've had them all be judges. It's super low lift for them to be a judge, especially if you kind of pare down a final pool for them. And their social media, they'll be happy to tweet about it and say they're involved and leverage their social media audience. And also, developers just want to get in front of them. So do that. Conversational ongoing promotion. So you don't want to be, the first post in a message board that developers are in shouldn't be, enter my challenge, right? It should have been, I'm here to answer any questions about using our API 3 months in advance so that they already know you. And when you launch your challenge, that's not your only ask, right? It's just part of your conversation with them. And showcasing all participants. Too many times the experience is, I entered the competition, I didn't win, and that's the last I heard. The last email or notification I got was, sorry you didn't win. Well, that sucks, right? You wasted your weekend, you have a lot of hours, nothing to show for it. So make sure your stuff is going to have winners, but everyone gets to demo, or if you're not going to do live demos, do it science fair style, so everyone can still show off what they built. And on the web presence, still show what everyone built, so they have that recognition online. It costs nothing. And that is all I have. 2 minutes for questions? No? I guess not.